Alright, so before we move on to our pianos, our other keys, effects, guitars, obviously vocals, let's talk about my tubas, because this is typically when I start putting stuff on my tubas after I have my drums and the bass sitting where I want it to sit. I'm not a big tubas guy. I don't do crazy processing. I leave that to the mastering engineer. In this case, it was Hans Decline, one of my dearest friends. I will let him decide how much spread it needs, how much volume we need. If he wants to boost anything, that's him with fresh ears. That's why I'm hiring him. And I trust him to do a better job at it than me. What I am looking for on my tubas are two things. I want to control anything that's building up and getting kind of nasty. And I do that with the Pro Q2 in mid-side mode like we spoke about before. Here's what I'm cutting out of the stereo field, just the left and right. If you're listening with a laptop right now, you should throw it out the window and rewatch these videos with speakers and headphones. It'll change your life. It will also make you a little dizzy what you just heard, because that's some nasty shit going on that we don't need in our mix. It's out. On the mid information on our Pro Q2, we're taking out some point at almost 2K, and that's what this sounds like soloed. Subtle, but it's almost a whistle tone that if you add any compression afterwards, you're screwed. The other reason why I like cutting that frequency out of the mids too are because vocals are going to end up in there, so just naturally, without me even processing vocals. So me cutting that out initially, it's going to help me use less EQ and less compression and all that kind of stuff to make the vocal step out front later on. The Bomber was a new plugin when I was mixing this song. I'm using their Mixbus 3D preset. It's really just adding a little bit more growl overall, a little bit more drive. It's making it fatter. So here is the track without it, and then with it. It's nice. It feels like things are moving around a little bit more than I was making them, which is cool. It's one of those magic boxes. You don't really know what it does, but if it sounds good, it sounds good. After that, we go to my EQ, which is the mainly massive passive. And this goes back to what we were talking about before, that Munson curve is, getting the lows and the highs to feel really good and scoop the mids out a bit. And this is actually a preset on this plugin, and what I'll do if it's too much or too little is I'll go in, and if it's boosting 4 dB, I'll drop it to 3 dB, and then I'll go to my mid band and my high band and drop it all down the same amount of dBs. And then basically I have varying degrees of this Munson curve. Here's without, and then with. A little bit of shimmer, but it's really, for me, it's just a really nice smoothing EQ. And that's what I'm looking for, because we're going to start throwing some vocals that need to be in your face. Last but not least, the best looking plugin on the market, Logic's I.O. plugin. What Logic's I.O. plugin allows me to do is use all this outboard gear really quickly. I have the SSL stereo bus hooked up to it right now, but I can choose any piece of outboard here really quick, and it's up and running within this plugin with latency compensation. Excellent. So, what I consider the one box that makes something sound like a record pretty quickly is the SSL stereo bus compressor. It's very subtle. I'm only really kissing it. I don't think that I'm going much, I don't think I'm cutting off any more than 3.5 dB gain. We're at a 2-to-1 ratio, fairly low. Auto release, which is just killer on this unit. Really slow attack, as slow as it goes. A little bit of makeup gain. And it's working more in the verses with all this low end than it is in the chorus. So here it is without. So it's subtle, but to me, I'm hearing everything just glue together a little bit, and what it's doing is it's taming a lot of my low-end information. So listen to the accented dun-dun bass drum. Just try to listen to that, and I'll flip it on and off, and you'll hear it instantly soften that transient, and overall just make the low end feel a little cleaner. Off. So that kick drum alone is taking off, this compressor is taking off about 3.5 dB out of just that one kick drum. That one kick drum is exciting this compressor that much. So it's subtle, but it makes a huge difference. And now that we have our low end stuff sitting where I want it to sit, it's glued together and it's feeling good, now I can start putting our top end information and driving it into the compressor. So let's start doing that. All right. So let's skip around a little bit. Here for my first set of guitars, I have the same exact original melody that was on the demo. There they are clean. We have 3 of them. So here's the first one, and it's panned pretty far to the left. Cutting a little lows here that we don't need. We're also cutting a bit off the top. And then we have an imperial delay. This is doing something cool. We are ducking a little bit, we're smearing a little bit, we're coloring it a little bit, and we're adding some chorus. So again, the reason why I'm not sending out to this is because this is just, I'm trying to make a guitar sound. I don't need to send it out somewhere. I'm just going to put it right on the strip. We have another guitar on the right with pasted settings, channel EQ, imperial delay, except now we've also added a Valhalla vintage verb. And it's a fairly long decay with a lot of pre-delay. Let's listen to it in solo for a second. Cool, so it's very soft and it's taking out a lot of transient, which is cool. And now here's the 2 together, left and right. Dreamy. Now, as I said, I copied and pasted the settings for the delay and the EQ. They're the same on each guitar, but I did add an extra verb on the other one. If I take that verb off, watch these 2 guitars left and right go like this, right into the middle. Panning knobs mean nothing if you're taking the same exact thing and putting them left and right. Adding a little bit of something else to it makes it feel outside the speakers. Also, with a reverb after the delay, which I like doing a lot, it smooths out the delay. So we're getting a lot more of dry delay coming from that left signal, and then the right one seems like we'd wash it out with all this stuff, but they're balancing each other out really nicely. And because this guitar goes on when there's no vocals, we have one right in the middle too. Here it is dry. So that's giving us our transients. On there, we're cutting a lot of lows and we're giving it some beef, some boxiness. I have a really cheap EQ, as I call it, on the strip, Logic's Silver Verb. It's a very cheap sounding EQ, which reverb, which I think is cheap in a great way, perfect for this sound. And then after that, we are using a stock compressor, and let's see what that's doing. Cool, so I am softening the attack a little bit, and I'm trying to make the notes feel a little bit longer. Probably so it glues together a little bit more with the left and right. Here they are. Cool, and that leaves us right where our first set of pianos kick in. We have a low and we have a high. They each have a little bit of EQ on them. And this one actually has our glitch plugin. Glitch 2, really cool stutter effect kind of plugin that kind of allows me to go in like a step sequencer and make really cool rhythms. I use it a lot in this track. Here's the first time it pops up. So here's the piano dry, the low one. Now here's a high one doing the same thing with glitch on. Pretty cool. Let's listen to that one more time. Cool, and those pianos pretty much go with the hook. Here they are together, and we'll also bring in the reverb that I'm sending out to. We're sending out to a different Valhalla Vintage Verb, a chamber setting. I'm liking pre-delay on this song. It seems to be knocking down my transients a little bit, making things smooth and very ethereal. Longer decay, some EQ going on. And we've got EQ here. Let's see what that sounds like together. Nice. So our transition now from our pretty acoustic guitars to our crazy hard pianos. So that's how we're setting ourselves up. Going into our verse, we introduce some top-end information. We have these swells, which are being created by three sources: an organ in reverse, a piano in reverse that was recorded really low, and a synth in reverse. Here is the organ. Here is the synth, which comes right after it. And then we have a piano right in the middle, kind of evening things out. There we go. There's our piano. And then all three together sound like this. Cool, so they were great sounding samples. There's no EQ or compression on them. Here's our transition. Moving on into that verse, we hit the MATTY background vocals, which are from the demo, and they sound like this. Yes, very Brian Wilson of me. Okay, as I said, I didn't want this to feel like a vocal. We added a lot of reverb to it. Rematrix, ultra wide, murky room preset. Now from here, everything else I do on the chain was done in context. So let's see, because it's the only way it's going to make sense. I see that we have an EQ, and we're cutting all the way up until about 607, basically 700 hertz. And then we have a dip at 2K, and then we're basically bringing it up, shelving everything up from 10K on. After that, we have another mainly massive passive with a Vox presence preset that I probably tweaked to taste. And then we're also using our good old friend center from Waves, and we're dropping out the center because there is a lead vocal going on here, and we want to get away from that. So here's what it sounds like in context. Cool. So now let's take out the EQ, center, and check it out. I would get fired if I left it like that. So instead, we made something pretty cool out of it. And one of those things that someone might not catch the first time around, but they'll catch it another time. Or they won't know what it is the first time, and they'll figure out what it is the second time. I love stuff like that. Here's how it turned out again. Okay, right after that, I added this sample of crowd noise. Let's listen to it. Cool, so there's a lot of stuff going on here under the hood. So first things first is some automation on our volume. And then we're also going a little bit crazy with our panning. Let's watch it one more time. Now this is our transition into the chorus where Juliana explodes. The story kind of unfolds, and now we know the punchline, which is all she ever hears is blah, blah, blah. So I thought this effect would be kind of cool as a transition. A crowd, a lot of people talking, and then we explode into the chorus where she tells them all to shut up. So I added some stuff on here. I added a pan man. It's called Wider and Wider. So it's basically moving along with my pan automation, and then it's getting bigger and bigger as the source goes on. Check it out. So it's a little bit of headphone fun, a little bit of trippiness. On that, we have a stereo delay on a quarter note. We also are taking out a whole bunch of nasty low information that we don't need. And we're also using another instance of glitch. So that's the result. However, we're not using glitch there. We are using it, however, here. And that will make more sense in context later. It also gets used at the end of the song right here. Making some drum fills out of our sound effects with more sound effects. Here's what the transition sounds like. All right, so now we have our verse into chorus transition. Now we're in our first chorus. Let's see what's happening. So as I said earlier, for me, the most interesting thing about the demo was this 12-string guitar part. It's played on an old Dan Electro, real twangy, crappy sounding 12-string electric guitar. It's also a drop tuning, which is giving it an interesting kind of feel. Not much going on it either. It's recorded really well. We're taking out lows that we don't need. I don't think we have to explain why. We all know that there's a lot of information on guitars that just don't need to be there. And then we're throwing a CLA 76 on it to, I think, to balance it out. Let's hear it. Yeah, so that compressor is just keeping it exactly where it is at all times. It's not letting it move. Here it is without, and then I'll flip it on. So compressor's just keeping it where it is. Additionally, on guitars, we have an orange amp on the other side. We are sending out to, once again, we're actually using a 224 now, to a lingering hall, just a tad, and a little bit of EQ. We're knocking out some lows, cutting out some of the point, giving it a little bit of shine around 5K, and then we're taking out some top stuff. Here's what the two sound like together. So I'm going to assume that if I take this EQ off, the frequencies of each guitar are going to match a little too close for my liking. And that's exactly it. I said before that when you're panning things left and right, unless you're doing different things to each of those, if they don't have their own space, they're gonna go right to the middle. So I EQ'd it in a way that wouldn't do that. And here it is again with the EQ on now. Let's also remember a few really cool anomalies about mixing and sound and frequency. We're cutting off some of the highs here, which is automatically going to make it feel like it's being pushed back, right? So if we have a left and right guitar thing going on, we have our 12 string on our left and we have this orange rocker on the right, they both can't be in your face, or they can. I didn't want it to be. So knocking off some of this top end is going to push it back a little bit. Aside from all the other EQ, which we heard in A and B, we're just cutting out mud and frequencies we don't need. That's majorly what I'm doing with this EQ, is I'm pushing that guitar back. So the 12-string one feels slightly ahead of it, even though they're completely on different sides. I'll flip it on and off again, and what I want you to do is I want you to listen to the guitar on the right push back when I put the EQ on. Sound. It's a wacky thing. Cool. What else do we got going on in the chorus? We have some harp and some vibes, all from our original demo. Here's what the harp and the vibes sound like. So these were actually in different spots in the demo, and I moved them around a whole bunch, probably maybe without even looking, and they ended up in really weird places. A little bit of EQ, a little bit of compression, not much going on. A little bit of silver verb, and then a little bit of an LA2A and reverb going out to our Valhalla chamber. And here's what they sound like now. Very corny, and I love it. One other big element of this chorus are these single notes that are doubling the bass. Even without processing on, I bet you it's going to make the low end feel a little deeper. So that's what I'm trying to do with these. I'm trying to get the low end to feel like it's dropping a little bit, getting a little dirtier. Let's see what we're doing here. We are putting it in mono. We have a bright piano, and I definitely messed around a little bit to bring out as much top end and nasty mids as we can, because to me that's always what fake pianos are missing. And then I think I started cutting out some frequencies that might have been getting in the way of the bass. Getting a little better. Compressor after that. Cool, so really trying to just make them sustain as long as possible. And then right on there we also have a rematrix reverb, which isn't doing too much. It is a fairly big hall reverb. Let's hear it. Another reason why I put this piano in mono was because I wanted it to feel kind of like a call and response thing with the other pianos. Check out the transition. So it's really helping the bass out there. Great, now here's our full chorus with all those sounds. Let's move on to later in the song where some new elements come in. We have some chorus effects. A little out of nowhere, but that's because this bridge is also a little bit out of nowhere. It was the only new section that I had to write for the song. And we introduced some new chords we haven't heard yet before, so let's listen to the vibe first. So we have our chorus piano playing some beautiful chords. We have our swells helping with the ambience. And then this chorus effects is actually helping us extend our high-end information. And then that brings us into our bridge, which we go back to our awesome distorted bass, now paired with a guitar. And you just heard the stutter effect automation come on. So check it out. The EQ on this guitar, I'm doing a few things in particular. Here's how it was recorded. It's recorded well. It's recorded with a Royer ribbon on a 112 orange speaker through an anniversary edition Marshall Plexi. And what I was going for out of this EQ was I almost wanted it to sound like a clock, like a ticking clock. So I cut out a lot of lows all the way up until about 500 hertz. And then I kind of found this frequency right here at 940 that kind of gave it a little bit of that clock feeling. Now here's why soloing things when you EQ things is the enemy, because it sounds just like a shitty guitar. But when you put it in context, it really does sound like a clock. And let's go back to where we have our stutter edit, our glitch 2 plugin kick in. And that automation is set like this. Great transition piece, great, almost like a drum fill.